All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out and braving the stormy weather outside. I know some of you even drove all the way down from San Francisco, so I appreciate you taking the commute to get here. Tonight, our sponsor is Upstart. So we're gonna, before we kick off talking about the topic for tonight, we're gonna have Anna Kauselman. Did I say it right? Yeah. Anna's going to tell you a little bit about Upstart, but she's also going to share her own background. In case you're not familiar, Upstart is an early stage, at least I would consider early stage startup. And it's always interesting to see how women get involved in that and what their different backgrounds are. Sometimes there's technical, sometimes they're on the business side. So without further ado, Anna.
Hello? Okay. Thank you for having me. I guess first off, I just want to say thank you, Purnima, for letting Upstart sponsor this event. We're all very passionate about furthering, women in leadership, and particularly when it comes to the STEM fields. I did a little research on Upstart before coming here, and we have kind of some interesting statistics in our company. So a third of our founding team are women, a third of our company are women, a third of our executive team are women, and actually a third of our currently funding Upstarts on the platform are also women. So I guess we're not quite at 50-50, but that's pretty good for a financial services technology company. So alrighty, so without further ado, let me jump into describing what Upstart is about. So Upstart is a crowdfunding platform that lets people raise money in exchange for a portion of their future income. So you can think of it as a Kickstarter for people. We're basically letting people monetize their future potential to raise money now. Now, what's different about Upstart than some other ways that you might be able to raise money is that it's funding for a person and not specifically their business or an idea. We're really the first company to ever truly start investing in individuals. Like venture capitalists always say, oh, we're not investing in an idea, we're investing in a founding team. Well, not really. You're actually investing in the business. And for us, we actually buy a share of someone's future income, and then you earn a percentage over time. And so if that person does well, our investors do well. And if that person doesn't do well, the investors don't do well. So it's a very different format. So let me kind of walk you through a little bit how our platform works. So basically, an Upstart shows up on our platform, and Upstart is really a platform that's open to anyone. Generally, we target people that are kind of getting started earlier in their careers, and you fill out an application. With that, we get a lot of different information about a person. So where they went to school, what they studied, any previous job offers they've had, their standardized test scores, all these different factors. And based on those, we run a regression model. And what we've done is we've put together this very sophisticated model that tries to predict, based on these attributes, what is the likelihood of what will your income look like over the next 10 years? And based on that, we'll give you a funding rate. So people can raise anywhere from $3,000 to $20,000 for 1% of their future income. So once you get that funding rate, you can publish a profile on our site. Backers, who are just general investors, will go through and browse many, many different profiles of Upstart, and they can choose to make investments. And then Upstart will collect the money over time and distribute those shares to investors. The other sort of interesting piece of our platform is, because you're investing in an individual, you have an opportunity to make an impact on that person's career path. So, if you're investing in Coca-Cola, for example, the only thing you can do to increase their stock price is buy more Coke, or, choose Coke over Pepsi or whatnot. Versus if you invest in an individual, you could actually impact their career trajectory by making an introduction, giving some advice here and there, helping them negotiate a job offer, maybe helping them get started on their product or whatever it is. And so we encourage the backers on our platform to be mentors to their Upstarts. We've built a communication platform for them so that they can communicate with each other, provide updates, and we highly encourage that interaction. So when you raise money on Upstart, not only are you getting the investment, but you're getting these backers that could conceivably help you achieve your goals. So since we've launched in November of 2012, again, we're still a small company. We're only 15 people, but we've had $3 million raised on the platform. We have several hundred participants on the platform already. We've been very lucky ourselves in terms of having our own backers. So we've raised money from kind of the top VC firms in the Valley, so very familiar with that process, which hopefully Purnima will tell you about today. And that's basically our platform. So as you learn about the different funding options for any startups that you might consider doing yourselves, or to the extent that you find success and you want to kind of reach back to the next generation of people that are getting started, consider investing on Upstart or raising money there. So I'll pause there on Upstart. Does anyone have any questions if I have a minute?
Yep, there you go.
Sure. You don't have to be, you do not have to be right out of school.
So the money you raise, where does it kind of go?
Oh, what do people use money for? Sure. So this is another unique aspect of Upstart. We don't direct what you use the money for. Typically, people will use the money for retiring their student loans to give themselves some flexibility, to put towards their startup, to cover their living expenses, to some people will use it to take an internship, for example, so they can get really good learning experience and maybe not get compensated as much in terms of money. So that's kind of the most standard. We do see a lot of entrepreneurs, so people that are not even necessarily like raising their seed round of capital, but even earlier stage, they're just trying to get 6 months of runway or something so that they can start working on that idea and then get ready to go out and raise round from a venture capital or angel investor or something like that.
Yeah, actually, when we did the blog post on you, one of the Upstart people reached out and said, oh, I'm an Upstarter, and he was an author. So he wasn't doing anything technical. He wanted to raise some funds to get his second book off of the ground. So they basically backed him in that endeavor. So there are some non-technical businesses or products that are being built as well.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. So we offer 2 flavors of contracts. One is 5 years and one is 10 years. And your funding, you can obviously get a higher funding rate if you go for a longer contract, or you can get a lower rate and just share for 5 years. And it's a percentage of what you earn. So if most people on average will share about 3% of their income. So it's sort of designed to be always affordable to you. But if you do well, then your investors do well. And if you don't do well, you're protected on the downside. Sure.
When you say income, is it just this day job income, or all kinds of income, like even winning a lottery?
All kinds of income. So it's line 22 in your federal income tax return, so income from any source, including winning a lottery. What we do for that use case is the investment is capped at 5 times the return. So if somebody wins a lottery, starts the next Facebook, etc., the most you could ever pay back is 5 times what you raised on the platform. So for $10,000 would be $50,000, for example, and then there's no more. And you can always buy out at that price too. The way we enforce the payment is by looking at your federal income tax returns. So we ask for those every year, and then we just reconcile the payments you've made throughout the year to see if they match what you owe. And there's a contract that is, the legal structure that's binding you to those agreements. So I'm going to pause now because I know I only have 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
So Purnima asked me to share a little bit of my story, so I'll run through that pretty quickly, and then maybe there's time for a couple more questions. Okay, so my journey in pictures. So I was born and raised in Moscow, and I share that because being a first-generation immigrant, I think, has had a huge amount to do with my career path and some of the decisions that I make. There's a recent article from Amy Chua, who's also known as the Tiger Mom, who talks about how there's certain immigrant groups that at the same time have the sense of superiority as well as a deep-seated sense of inferiority. And what I would say to that is I've always had this perspective of, I need to do great things, I need to have an impact on the world, and at the same time I have this deep fear that I am nowhere near up to the task, and I kind of oscillate between those two places as I make my career decisions. So my career path is not for the faint of heart. So the first lucky break I got in my career was actually winning the green card lottery and being able to stay in America. And so that sort of set the backdrop. That was the one lucky thing that happened that has allowed for everything else to follow. So this is my career path. It's not a straight shot. When I was graduating from college, I was the first class at Boston University who studied entrepreneurship. And while most of my friends headed off to Wall Street, I was saying, no, forget that. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be a job creator, and I'm going to run off and do that. And I did that. I started a company in college, and I moved to LA. I had a very interesting journey for a couple of years. I'm not still at that company, so it didn't turn out very well. But it was a terrific learning experience, and eventually I landed at Google, which is a wonderful place. And if any of you are considering an engineering career there, it is wonderful, particularly for women. And I wanted to share one anecdote with you that kind of sets up the rest of my life. I know Sheryl Sandberg is super played out with the whole lean-in movement, but I feel about Sheryl a little bit of the same way as people feel about their indie garage band. Like, I knew her before she was Sheryl. Back in 2007, she was just, the head of online sales and operations. But I remember sitting in this manager conference where there was about 600 people from all over the world, and Sheryl was on stage next to Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was showering her with accolades of how fabulous she is and how committed to the company she is. And he was joking about how committed she was because she was about 8.5 months pregnant on stage during this time. And I just remember looking up and thinking, wow, like, women can really have it all, and you don't have to compromise, and you can have this fabulous career and do this. And so I decided, like, I would be at Google forever, and I would run a business unit there. And the cool thing about Google is you can work on things that impact the whole world, and that's really exciting. So, they measure their users in hundreds of millions, and that's very cool. So I was going to be there forever. And then I got Jerry Maguired. So the head of enterprise, who's also the CEO of Upstart, who happened to be my boss's boss's boss and just an amazing figure at Google, was leaving to start Upstart, and he tapped me on the shoulder to see if I would come with him. And it went from thinking I'd be at Google for the next 50 years to giving my notice. I think I talked to him on Friday morning. I told him I was joining on Friday night, and I came in on Monday and said, I can't not do this. And I feel very passionate about what we're doing at Upstart, because really it's fundamentally about enabling young people to pursue really audacious goals, to build businesses, to become job creators, and to invest in themselves so that they can have a better career trajectory, and to do that with the help of money and backing from people that have gone before them. So I could have really used that as I was getting started in my career, and I really wanted to have that impact. So then I was out of Google, and then thus Upstart was born. And then a few months later, this guy was born. So this is my son, Tristan. And I made kind of the crazy decision to leave Google, the company that's well known for being the best place to be as a working mom, to join a startup. And the one thing I would say in favor of that, if any of you are sort of considering it, well, one, I had Cheryl's voice in the back of my head going, don't leave before you leave, and you don't even have this baby, don't make this decision. But also, startups are a great way to blend your family and your business environment, where no matter how wonderful a company is in terms of their maternity policy, once you're back, you're back. Versus at Upstart, we had a lot of this going on. So this is Tristan at 4 months old, at our staff meeting, providing some very interesting input. And so, to the extent that you're kind of letting the anticipation of family stand in the way of pursuing audacious things, I promise you that there's a way to blend them, and there's a way to make it work. So that happened, and then a lot of this happened. Upstart's been incredibly lucky to get phenomenal press and a lot of traction, and it's been a pretty wild ride. We're still very early, and nothing is decided, but we're definitely starting to see that hockey stick growth. And so that is my journey. And in closing, just wanted to leave you with 3 thoughts. One is, there has never been a better time to be a woman in business, particularly in tech. Everywhere, at Google, there's like program after program that's looking for women leaders, that's looking to bring more women in technology, that's looking to groom people to get into senior leadership positions. At Upstart, we're constantly on the lookout for women that are starting businesses, for women that are pursuing the study of developer boot camps, things like that, women that are looking to go out on their own and do interesting things. There's such a rich community of people. Down to, I was at the White House, and they were trying to make sure that the panel of speakers necessarily had the right ratio of women up there. It really is everywhere. You have all the support you need. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. The second thing is early in my career, I spent a lot of time fretting about who I was going to be when I grow up and like how my career was going to pan out and doing a lot of planning and worrying. And, you know, it turns out that careers tend to unfold a lot more than you think. So, you know, take the first step, whatever that thing is that you're passionate about, and just do it and the rest will come. And then feel the fear and do it anyway. It wouldn't be bravery if you weren't a little afraid. And when I was at Google, I used to have this mental model where if I wasn't doing something at least once a quarter that I was really scared to do, then I wasn't pushing myself and I wasn't growing. So that is what I learned in my career so far. And hopefully there'll be a lot more to come. And now I'll turn it over to Purnima because I think I took up my spot.
Thank you. All right. Sure. Okay, well, thank you, Anna, for your presentation on Upstart. And if you guys have more questions, we can take them during the Q&A period about Upstart. Feel free to talk to Anna as well during the breakout session or any of the other Upstarters present. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about the topic for tonight, which is finance for Femgineers. It's a little bit of a misnomer, and I'll explain why. But this was the best title I could come up with. So before we begin, I just want to explain what Femgineer is and why we host this event in particular. This is actually a monthly event. It's called the Femgineer Forum. Been doing it since December 2012, and I think this is our 11th or 12th one. I've lost count after like the 10th one. And the premise behind it is that we want to talk about strategies and not only talk about them, but practice them. So after I do my little spiel up here, everybody breaks out into groups. You get to practice what I've talked about. We reassemble, and then because it's a kind and nurturing environment, you get to get some feedback from your peers so that when you go to work tomorrow or a month later or whatnot, you've gotten a chance to actually, you know, practice your skills and it doesn't feel brand new. The other thing is Femgineer. I started it off as a blog back in 2007 about engineering and entrepreneurship, but since December of 2012, we've become an education company, and our basic goal is we want to help tech professionals and tech entrepreneurs build products and companies. And the way that we do that is we offer events like this, but we also have a number of online courses that we're doing. So we've got some on soft skills, like our Confident Communicator course that we're launching, and then we've got some on product and technical skills as well. The key thing is that these are all intermediate level classes, so if you're looking to just get started coding, we're not the company for you. There's plenty of other folks doing that out there. Our goal is to keep people in tech and to help them work up the ladder to basically build leaders. So for that, we want to encourage them. We want to teach them the skills that they wouldn't necessarily get, you know, in a graduate program or on the job. Okay, so back to today's topic of finance for Femgineers. I said this was a little bit of a misnomer because I'm not going to sit here and tell you about, you know, how to do finance. What I'm going to talk to you about is how you, if you want to build something, whether it's a project internally or even something like your own product, or have an idea that you want to bring out into the market, you can get your company to actually fund it. And you can use a lot of these same principles whether you're going out and getting someone else to fund your idea as well. So the first is we're going to talk about why is it even important if you've got an idea to pitch this idea to somebody within your organization. The second is where can you find resources? Well, if you're an entrepreneur, we've already given you one resource, which is Upstart. If you're within a larger organization, we'll talk about what those resources are that are available. And then the biggest and most important is how do you actually go out pitching this idea, right? A lot of times that's the big issue. It's like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to get rejected, or I'm not sure that I have the best approach. So what's the strategy involved with doing that? And then I hope you all stick around so that you get to practice some of this in the breakout sessions. So before we get into the topic, I want to share a little bit of my story, which is, you know, I worked at a big company. That was my first job. And then obviously I went on to be a founding engineer at Mint. But at the beginning, I was always maintaining code, right? And I'm sure a number of you have had this where you get a project, you're given it, and if you're like me, I was working on a 20-year-old code base. And it's just like everything that you do is so boring and so frustrating, and you want to propose a new idea, but they're like, you're just right out of college, or oh, you're 2 years out of college, or oh, no, you're only 3 years out of college, right? And they don't say that to you, but that's how they feel. And so I was getting really frustrated because I had all these ideas and I wanted to pitch them so that we could improve the product or we could improve a process internally. And that's when I decided that I just wasn't pitching it right. I really wasn't getting into how I could position this in such a way that was mutually beneficial for me to stop maintaining code and start learning new technologies and start building products, and how it would benefit my team and the company. So I had to learn that over time, and in doing that, it's let me gain more, I would say, freedom and also less anxiety when it comes to managing my own business. So I'll talk to you about what those are. So like I said, we're not going to focus on how do you negotiate for a raise, because actually it's going to be a slam dunk once you pitch your project and complete it. And the second is we're not going to talk specifically about how you get funding from investors, because that's also not going to be the focus, but we've got Upstart here to answer any questions. So I'm sure you also have this maybe right now, or maybe you've had it in the past, or maybe you're about to go through it, right? You're like, I'm stuck working on mind-numbing projects. I don't know why I went and got this 4-year degree or grad school or whatever it was, right? You just feel like you're going to get pigeonholed and you're not really sure what's next. And then you have a brilliant idea. You're like, I know there's got to be a way to improve the process here. Everybody is doing things inefficiently, and really there's this new technology and we should just start using that. Or, these products are great, but they're really antiquated. We really need to get with the times and start developing some new technology. But then you have this feeling, I'm probably going to get rejected if I propose whatever my idea is. There's no budget, probably. My boss is going to be like, why aren't you doing your work, right? You start to have all of these thoughts. And then, the thoughts that aren't becoming in your mind are why you should actually pitch the project regardless, right? And those are, because you'll be the owner, right? If you come up with the idea, you're the owner of that idea. The second is, this is actually the fast track to getting promoted, right? Because if you're the owner and you are advancing the company, then it's very clear why you deserve a promotion. Now, the third and probably best kept secret is that this is an important ingredient for being considered a senior level person, because it's not just about what alphabet soup of technologies you have under your belt. It's that you can come up with an idea, you can pitch it to other people, you can motivate them to actually ship it, and you can impact the bottom line. And that's what people, without a doubt, are willing to promote and to keep and to advance into senior level positions. And that means that you're also managing a budget. So that's the finance part of this. Now, the fourth best kept secret is that that's actually what employers want, right? They might say something like, oh no, just get back to your job. But if you actually do a good job of presenting a proposal that's going to have a bottom line, they're going to hear you out. So we'll talk about what that looks like. But ultimately, they want people that are bosses want people that are going to make them look good, and they want employees that are going to help advance the team and advance the company. So let's say you have an idea. It's any of these things, right? It could be that you want to improve a product. It could be that you want to go to a training or a conference. Or it could be that you want to host an event, like one of these forums, right? It could be anything. When you're thinking about this, right, you're oftentimes having what's called assumed constraints. This is the idea that, oh, well, I might as well not pitch any of these things because my boss is going to tell me I am stuck working on this, or I feel like I'm stuck working on this current project. So there's no way I'm going to even be able to go to that training or attend that conference or host that event. The second, of course, is, oh, my idea is going to get rejected, so why bother stepping up? Or the third is you, without even knowing, might be like, there's probably no resources. I saw Larry get fired, so that must mean we're out of money, right? So you just start to assume that there's no resources. There's no time, there's no budget, there's no team. But here's the problem. If you have that assumed constraint thinking, then of course you start to give up. But let's assume you're one of these people that are just a little bit more persistent, right? Maybe you don't give up initially. Instead, you might be more of a worrywart, right? So you end up, instead of actually pitching your idea, you're worrying about it all the time. You're worrying about getting rejected. You're worrying about being perfect. Or you're worrying about what the outcome's going to be, right? Am I going to be able to actually make this successful? Are we going to get customers? Are we going to make money off of this, right? These start to consume you instead of actually pitching what the project is. So how much time was that in total, right? Covering all those 3 worries, thinking about it in the shower, at your cubicle, on the commute, probably at this forum, right? You're spending all this unnecessary energy worrying about something that you haven't even taken the first step to proposing. So what if you instead turned that worry and thought about what are some strategies that you can do to actually get approved, right? Get the idea off the ground, get some funding for it, get some teammates, and get some time to focus on it. Well, here's the first thing. Too often we think about ourselves, right? Because in general, we tend to be a little bit selfish. So it's always, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know if I can pitch this idea, instead of thinking, how can we incentivize other people to participate on this project? How can we motivate our boss to want to give us time, to want to give us resources, right? So this is what we have to start thinking about. Now, this is not about asking for permission, right? This isn't saying, hey, boss, can I work on the mobile project now? Please, please, please. That's not the point here. The point is we're presenting a mutually beneficial opportunity, right? We've identified some problem, we have a solution, we have a plan in place, and we're going to pitch that and then also explain what some potential outcomes can be. So I want you to meet these 3 new best friends of yours. They're called Risk, Leverage, and Ask. And I'll explain when you're going to meet each of them and how you're going to use them to your advantage. So, you know, what happens when you ask? When you go up to somebody like your mom and you're like, hey, mom, can I have 50 bucks? Right? She's going to be like, why do you need money? Especially at this age, if we ask her, like, why do you need money, right? You work in a tech job. You should have enough to support yourself. But like, assume you're a kid, right? If you go up and ask mom, hey, can I have $50? She's going to be like, no. But let's say you come home one day and you show her your report card and you've got all straight A's, right? And then you're like, hey, can I have $5? She's like, yeah, sure. And then a week later, you're like, hey, I just mowed the lawn and washed the dishes and cleaned the car and took out the trash. Can I have $10? She's going to be like, yeah, okay. And then, you know, you keep doing this over time. Eventually, you accumulate $50. And then you don't need to ask mom permission for whatever you want to do. You've already got the money you need to do whatever you want, right? So this is what we called, you know, when you go through the method of just asking up front, you get rejected. But if you instead take a little bit of time and think about, okay, I've asked for too much and therefore she's going to reject me, then, you know, the reason is that she's thinking about the risk involved. If I give this kid $50, what are they going to do? Are they going to go shopping? Are they going to spend it on candy or Coke or whatever, right? So they're oftentimes feel like there's a lot of risk involved here. They're not really sure what the money is going towards. And not only that, their ass is on the line, right? And this is how your boss feels. If you go up and ask for the whole thing initially, like, hey, I want to work on this project, I need this much money and these people, they're going to be like, whoa, take a step back. Why are you doing this? This is a huge risk. We've already got projects in the pipeline. There's no point in pursuing something new, right? So this is your first friend. You've got to think about how you can figure out what the risk is that your boss is facing and think about how you can mitigate that. So, like I said with the mom story, you've got to warm people up. You've got to warm them up to what it is that you want to do or what the resources are that you need. And what I mean by that is you're going to take this, what's called a bite-sized sales approach. And that means that each step of the way, you're asking for something really, really small so that they don't even know that they're being sold to, right? They just think, oh, so-and-so wanted this and I gave it to them, no big deal. So the first thing you're going to ask is for somebody's time, right? So you go up to your supervisor or the team lead or whomever and you say, hey, I've got this idea. I'd really like 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever you need. Say, do you have the time to sit down? I'd like to talk to you about something. And then hopefully they say yes, and when they do, then you can sit down with them. Now this is the second phase. This is where you ask for feedback. You're still not pitching anything. You're not saying, here's my brilliant idea, give me money. This is where you're saying, so I've noticed we have this problem here. Have you noticed that we have this problem too? Yeah, I have. Great. And I've noticed that it's causing a lot of tension on the team, that we're losing money, that customers are unhappy, that developers are unproductive, right? And you go off and you ramble off all of the list of issues. And they're like, yeah, I've noticed that too, right? So you're starting to collect feedback. You're starting to get what's called buy-in. say, so I have this idea that I think will help improve all of that. And here's the idea. And you just lay out the initial part of it, right? You don't tell them what the budget is or time or any of that yet. You say, here's the idea. Has this been tried before? They're like, yeah, it was tried, and here's why it failed, right? So then they give you a recipe. They give you the answers. They say, here are the reasons why it was rejected. There wasn't enough money. There wasn't enough time. People got demotivated. We couldn't get Larry to participate, and that's why he got fired, right? There's all these things that start to happen. But the thing is that they've given you a list of objections, which means now what you have to do is come up with a plan to address all of these objections, right? If they're like, there's not enough people motivated, that's when you go recruit people. If there's not enough budget, you say, look, here's how much money we're losing. So if we invest a little bit into this project, we can recoup the cost of customer support, of tickets, of the product quality, etc. Right? So this is how you get them to actually do all the heavy lifting for you. Now, the next phase is approvals, right? Nobody likes approvals because you have to talk to a lot of people. But here's the secret thing about approvals. When you need to get approvals from somebody, that means you have to talk to them. And if you have to talk to them, that means you're going to develop a rapport with them. And if you develop a rapport with them, that means that somewhere along the line, they're going to know who you are. Now, in a lot of companies, if you want to advance, if you want to be either on a technical track or a management track, you actually need multiple levels of approval. Right? You need multiple people to say, yes, I know Larry, he does good work. Oh, yeah, I do too, right? This is oftentimes how people get promoted into senior level positions. So even pitching something like this and just going through the process of getting to know people, right, gives you a little bit of a leg up. If you're not willing to do this, then probably not, going to be able to manage other people or manage a project, but keep that in mind as well. So this is where your second friend comes in. Leverage, right? As you start to meet these people, once again, they're going to be answering your feedback, they're going to be giving you feedback, they're going to be giving you objections. And as they do this, you're starting to build leverage, right? You now know how to position this project you have. You now have a sense of how much maybe it costs to take it off, or how much people need to put in as a budget, what the time is, because you've looked through the laundry list of past projects that might have failed or reasons why people were opposed to it, right? So they've basically given you a crib sheet, and you can use this as leverage when you get ready to put together your proposal for your project. Now the key is to find some alignment, right? Because oftentimes people will say, well, there's multiple projects going on. We don't know if this is another one that we want to take on. Or, yeah, we're really happy with these like 10 products. We don't need a new one. Why are we bothering with this? So the key, once again, is to figure out what people are already working on, what their goals are, and can you tie into that? So what do I mean by that, right? Well, basically, it comes down to, can you position this in some way that's going to benefit not only your boss, right, because they're the initial approver, but ultimately the business's bottom line, right? Can you sit down and do some numbers, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us are engineers, so we're capable of figuring out, all right, how much is this defect costing us? How much are these bug problems causing us? Or how many tickets are coming in that the customer support staff has to answer? How much is that costing us in terms of quality, right? And therefore, we need to put the time and the effort into fixing this. I know, it's so like, whew, that's a lot of information, right? So here's the thing. What I mean by this is we have a very simple formula. The first is you start with what your current problem is today, right? We notice there's a lot of bugs, there's a lot of tickets that need to be closed, and they're all originating from this one product. So we need to take the time, put together a project that will solve that. We basically, and that's costing us in terms of X amount of hours a month. It's costing us Y amount of dollars in terms of bottom line for the business. And ultimately, it's impacting our quality and the way customers perceive that, right? So now we've stated the problem, and we've stated how big of an impact it is for the business. So then, once we do that, we can explain what the solution is. So we would like 3 months to roll this project out, and we're going to have a deliverable every month. Here's what it's going to look like, and here's what the ROI is going to be. If we fix these things, we'll get these customers back, we'll start to make this much money, etc. Right? If you can present that kind of plan, who's really going to say no, right? And on top of that, you've already gotten their secret list of objections, which you're also answering in this document. So are they really going to have any issues with it? So ultimately, this isn't a point where we say, all right, can we please have some money? This is, when can we get started? Did you buy into this, and can we start working on this? Because we'd really like to, improve the business. But even after I say this, some of you will go out and pitch your bosses or pitch your teams or pitch your PMs and come back and they'll say, yeah, I did all that work. It took me about a month. And then they came back to me and they said, oh, we changed our mind. We don't want to do this project anymore. I'll be like, okay, well, I get it. But I want you to go back and do this, right? So what I mean by that is, even if somebody says we've changed their minds, right? Then it's a matter of saying, okay, so this problem, does it no longer have this big impact? Are we no longer still losing this much money? Are we no longer losing these customers? It'll cause them to rethink, right? It'll cause them to refocus and say, okay, you're right. So at sometimes you have to reiterate what the value is of doing a project. I know it's frustrating, but it's the name of the game. So you have to restate, look, we sat down, I laid out this plan, I explained what the problems were, and also the cost of inaction, which are these big impacts, right? The loss of money, the loss of time, the loss of quality. I also mentioned what the solution is and what the ROI is. So if you don't believe in this, then we can can the project, but otherwise you've got to give me some leeway to continue working on it, right? So oftentimes this is what they call in sales, telling the customer again why it is they wanted to buy the product, right? They might have some buyer's remorse, but you're restating why they bought it, right? You bought that Prius because you wanted to save on gas. Don't forget that. I know you're paying your monthly bills and it might seem extravagant, but really, ultimately you're saving. But you kind of have to reiterate that value proposition to people. Now, if you don't think this technique works, this actually worked on me a number of years ago. So my co-founder at BusyBee came up to me one day and said, I have this list of 10 projects. Like my eyes glazed over. I was like, 10 projects? We're a team of 5. We can't do all of this. So I said, how about you just pick one project? And he said, okay. So he went back home, he thought about the one project that he wanted to do. And what he identified was that we were spending a lot of unnecessary time coding things in HTML and then copying and pasting the code. So he wanted to do what was called Hamelize the code base, which is basically, create code so that we wouldn't have to actually write the HTML and cut and paste it. And he said it was going to take a couple weeks to put this in place, but once we did it, it would cut down on developer time, we'd be able to ship product faster, which meant we'd be able to keep our customers happy, and we'd continue that cycle. So I agreed, and we had to put a little bit of a process change, but fortunately we were a team of about 4 or 5, so we were able to do it. And then once we did that, I was like, okay, what's next on your list? And over time, I started to see that he did a really good job of pitching his projects. In fact, he did such a great job that I started to compare him to my other employees who wouldn't pitch projects. And I was like, I don't know if this other person is really helping the bottom line of this business, right? And that's why ultimately I promoted him to be my co-founder. I was like, he's doing such a good job. He started off as a contract employee. Right? So think about this as you are thinking about how can I advance in the company, how can I come up with my own projects to get people off my back to pursue the projects that are no longer mind-numbing, but give me a chance to try to play with some new technology, attend a cool conference or event, or even take over a business unit. Okay, so once again, coming back to this, we talked about why is it important to pitch your idea, right? Why is it important? Because this is where you actually get to show you have some leadership, you can motivate other people, you can identify problems and solutions, you can manage a budget, and you can deliver. And if you do something like this, then basically, you deserve to be in a senior level position. The second is, where do you find resources? This is where you have to get a little bit covert, right? And you've got to walk through some levels of approval, talk to some people in departments, ask them for feedback, ask them for objections, collect that, and then you go in with the formula, right? The formula being, here's the problem, here's the impact, here's the solution, here's how we're going to deliver it, here's the ROI, and then ultimately, this is why we want to keep working on this project, right? So if you can come up with that sort of formula, then you can pitch the projects you want to pitch, work on the things that you want to work on. Like I said, get your boss off your back and stop doing the mind-numbing work. So in the breakout session, we're going to take that formula, and if you all have any ideas for projects within your company, that's what you're going to do. You're going to sit through and go through that formula. You're going to pitch it to your peers within it and get some feedback, and then we'll reconvene here and we'll have a few groups go up and pitch their idea and give you all feedback. But before we convene, a couple quick announcements. The first is our next forum is going to be at Gumroad up in SF. And the topic is going to be how do you showcase your expertise through content. So if a number of you have ever thought about how can I write a book to showcase my expertise, whether it's a small ebook or something larger, or you're thinking about, hey, I'd really like to sell some of my workshops or ideas, how do I package all of that up? How do I present it to an audience? We're going to cover that because that's actually Gumroad's specialty. They make it easy for people to sell digital products. So we're going to talk about that at Gumroad. It's on March 13th. And then if any of you are interested in hosting a forum, we're pretty much booked until April, but we're looking for sponsors from May onwards. So if you have a company who would be interested in hosting us, please let us know. And then, as I said, we are an education company. We have 4 classes, 3 brand new ones that we're launching this spring. So the first is a confident communicator class. This is going to be how do you not only improve your communication skills one-on-one and in meetings and with people, but also how can you become a better public speaker, how can you submit proposals to conferences, and even how can you get paid to speak. And then our web product development class is a new class that we're launching. It's more technical. And then the final is our lean product development class, which we've been running. We're on our 4th iteration now. And this is geared towards engineers and entrepreneurs for launching products, both inside companies and outside if you have a startup. And then I've got my 3-month mentoring. So if you want any information on that, you can check it out there. And just in case, this was a lot of information and you want to kind of dig into some of the concepts a little bit more, I released the first 2 chapters of my book. You can get it off of Gumroad. Yeah, and I talk a lot about the bite-sized sales technique, how to build teams, how to basically persuade people to building software products and ideas that you want to be built.